Friends, teaching is a topic that is very close to my heart for a couple of reasons. Number one, because I believe that teachers shape the youth in more ways than we can ever measure. Yes, of course, good infrastructure helps, new technology also helps, but research tells us that teacher expertise, that is the skill and the heart and the art of a teacher, has a greater impact on student upliftment and student development than all other factors combined together. Teacher expertise is greater than great infrastructure or great technology. Think about it. Long after we forget the classroom walls or the exam dates, we still remember the teachers who believed in us. Great teachers leave lifelong imprints on our minds. If you agree with that, type in a yes in the comments and also type in the name of the teacher who has impacted you the most. I'd love to read about it later. And the second reason why this topic of creating better teachers is so close to my heart is because I'm the son of a teacher. I'm the proud son of a teacher. My mother taught English literature for more than 35 years at the R.R. Bawa DAV College for Girls in Batala. I grew up around mark sheets and red pens and lesson plans. To me, my mother was a superhero, balancing family and still doing full justice to her job. Even today, decades later, I meet her students all across the world whose faces still light up just talking about K. Paul Madam. That's the impact she left. And in my own way, for almost 20 plus years now, whether I've been called a motivational speaker, a coach, or a facilitator, or a keynote speaker, I've also been a teacher. At heart, that's what I do. I teach. And today, I want to share with you a few simple, practical tips on how to be a better teacher in today's world, especially in the era of AI. You're now competing with chatbots who can talk with emotion, who can create mind maps, and so much more. And my 5 points, this is not an exhaustive list, and these are not coming from any textbook. These are lessons learned from my own journey and from some of the brilliant teachers that I've learned from on the way. So I hope you will stay with me all the way till the end and that you will let me know in the comments which one of these 5 points resonated the most with you. Let's get right into it. So tip number 1 is using Jim Kwik's formula. Jim Kwik, he's a leading memory and learning expert, and you might have watched his videos online, and his courses on Mindvalley are phenomenal. And I learned this from him. He says people learn best when 3 things are present. And this is very important for teachers. People learn best when 3 things are present. Number 1, when they're in the right state of mind. Number 2, when they participate actively. And number 3, when they learn to teach. I think this is worth repeating. The right state of mind, active participation, and learning to teach. Think about it. If your students are tired or stressed out or distracted, you could be the greatest teacher on this planet and your message could still not get through. That's why I always begin my classes by shifting their energy a little bit, by uplifting their state of mind a little bit with a breathing exercise, a short stretching exercise, or maybe a little positive story. Just a couple of minutes can turn a passive audience into an alert and awake and receptive class. Number 2 comes participation, which means that you don't do all the talking. You see, as a teacher, your vocal cords, they also need some rest, and theirs need some exercise. So flip the conventional wisdom. The conventional wisdom is keep talking so there's no silence in the class. No. That way you're going to strain your vocal cords and not give them any opportunity to talk. So don't just deliver content, engage them, ask questions, leave sentences unfinished. I usually do that in my keynotes and I make this signal so the audience can complete my sentences. That way there's active participation. Invite random students to share their thoughts. And here, participation is more than involvement. It's about ownership. Once they begin to jump in, they feel they're part of what's going on, right? And the third one, Jim Kwik's formula, is the most important one, is to ask them to teach each other. When people learn to teach, their retention goes up, their understanding goes up. So this is one of my favorite activities. It's a peer-to-peer exercise that I typically do towards the end of a workshop or a keynote. I pair people together in groups of 2. So they're a couple, and one person will play the teacher, the other one will be the student. I give them 3 minutes to summarize what they learned. The teacher summarizes the key takeaways of the lesson and the student lessons. And then the student becomes the teacher. They take turns, they switch roles, and the other person cannot repeat what's already been said. They both learn twice. They're now 6 key takeaways and they retain more. So I hope this makes sense. And let's now move to tip number 2, which is mastering the art of storytelling. Once upon a time. There's plenty of stories on our channel. I encourage you to watch all of them. But my friends, and those stories have done very well because before the internet, before YouTube, before books, even before universities, human beings passed wisdom through stories, generation after generation through stories. And guess what? We're still wired to listen to stories. Say these words in your class, and even when I say them in my keynote, once upon a time, and people suddenly begin to lean forward. Their eyes become wider and their bodies more attentive. Even the most disengaged audience or students, they now become curious. What's going to follow these words? Once upon a time. That's the magic of stories. That's the magic that Bollywood and Hollywood create. I remember my history teacher, Mr. Morris from St. Francis School in Batala. Although he taught history, which could be a boring subject if not taught well, and could be a very interesting subject if taught well, Mr. Morris sir, we used to call him, his secret weapon was storytelling. At the end of every class, he would tell us a gripping story. He would be biting our nails. The story would be filled with suspense and twists and cliffhangers. We would all eagerly await for Morris sir's class, not for history lessons only, but for his stories. He knew how to wrap learning inside a powerful story that we couldn't forget. And storytelling, my friends, it doesn't have to be complicated. You could convert historical moments, say for example, the assembly line system of manufacturing, into a story. Say, once upon a time, there lived a man named Henry Ford. And Henry Ford asked, why must workers move around the car? Why can't the car move instead? And the worker will stay in one place. And boom, with that question, the assembly line was born, revolutionizing industry, and we had efficiencies of scale. And that's how you convert a historical happening into a memorable story. You see, students don't just remember stories, they see themselves inside the stories. They can immerse themselves, just like wearing one of those virtual reality headsets. You've created a virtual world in which they can now immerse themselves, and they are going to go beyond just information. You are now firing up their imagination. That's a different faculty of the brain you've just awakened using storytelling. You see, facts inform the mind, and stories touch the heart. And a teacher who can impact both the heart and the mind, she's a true transformational teacher. Let's move on now to tip number 3, which is teaching with empathy. Empathy, my friends, is your edge in an era of AI and chatbots and ChatGPT and Perplexity. This is an era where your students can just copy-paste a lesson and put it into an AI software, and it can immediately generate beautiful, colorful mind maps and videos and podcast summaries and audio summaries and whatnot. Think about how the world is changing. But what these programs cannot do is they cannot feel, they cannot sense, and they cannot make course corrections based on the feelings of the students. At least not yet. Who knows what happens in the next 5 years? But you can. You as the teacher can feel what's happening, can sense what's going on in the emotional climate of the classroom and in the minds of your students, who's coming from where, what sort of challenges a student might be struggling with, and you can make course corrections based on these observations. That's your edge. Empathy is the ability to see the world through your students' eyes, to understand their struggles, what might be happening in their homes, how long they've been sitting on the same seat in the same classroom, what happens after lunch when they struggle to keep themselves attentive, what happens when they go home, when they have these fascinating devices and they watch all these exciting videos, and how different a world school is. You understand their fears, their dreams, the pace at which they learn, and all of this is powerful information which you can use to change your approach. I encourage you to sit on the benches in your classroom every once in a while and look around you and see what changes you might like to bring about in the class. See what you like, what you don't like. I've learned a lot In doing that, I often go and sit before my keynote begins, I go and sit in the chairs before the audiences come in, right at the back sometimes to see, is the audio okay? Is the lighting okay? What can I change? How would it be a better experience for my audience today? So what I'm encouraging you to do is to be a student for a day. Okay, if not in your school, maybe you can go to a workshop or a conference and act like a student, not a teacher. You'll have a different paradigm and you will end up with a deeper understanding of the learning process and what improves the learning process and what becomes a hurdle. And you'll get a ton of ideas, I promise you, and also a deeper empathy of what happens after the lunch is over, what happens during the post-lunch slump. There's also a story I love about Teddy Stoddard and his teacher. It's there on our channel. And in that story, it's Mrs. Thompson and Teddy Stoddard, where Mrs. Thompson is the teacher. And at first, she dismisses him as a difficult, uninterested, and poor student. But when she discovers his struggles and what he's going through at home, something changes. She chooses empathy, she chooses love, and she chooses to encourage him, support him, and to believe in him. Teddy goes on to become a successful doctor, and when he invites her years later to his wedding, he says, "Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. You were the one who made a difference." And she said, No, Teddy, you've got it all wrong. I should thank you because you taught me how to teach. You taught me how to go beyond the subject and to actually teach. Sometimes, my friends, all a student needs is not another lecture, but a teacher, someone like you, who sees them, who values them, and believes in them. So a quick recap of what we've covered so far. Number one is creating the right state, encouraging participation, and let them play the teacher. Number two is harnessing the timeless power of storytelling. Number three is leading and teaching with empathy. We'll now move on to tip number 4 in becoming a better teacher in the world of AI. Make your learning relatable. Relatability, that's what we're talking about. And this is what separates good teachers from unforgettable teachers. Relatability. See, the truth is, our students live in a world of distractions and social media notifications and video games and ChatGPT and so much more. If your content doesn't connect to their world, not to your world, if your content does not connect, or your delivery, or your presence, or your current skills are not able to connect with the world of the students, your content will vanish the moment they leave your class. In fact, they will not even be paying attention and you will not have earned their respect. But if you tie abstract concepts to the current reality, to their world, to what's happening in the world at the moment, and how it could be useful in the future, suddenly the lesson becomes more interesting and becomes unforgettable. Let's take math as an example. Can you explain percentages through cricket strike rates or batting averages? Every cricket fan in your class, I promise you, is going to light up and it will be interested. Can you talk about accounting using concert ticket sales, right? Take Diljit Dosanjh as an example. Say, this is how many tickets he sold. If he sold at all these different prices, what is going to add up? And suddenly it'll not just be a math problem, it'll be an interesting issue to solve, because a lot of who knows, a lot of your students might be envisioning themselves as future performers or something like that. Can you teach other concepts using shopping discounts and, whether it's politics or whether it's math or there's algebra, there's a lot of ways you can connect. And once you do that, these concepts are not just abstract anymore, they come alive. Relatability also means keeping it current. For example, if you're teaching economics, can you connect it to inflation trends or how food prices on their favorite food delivery apps, such as DoorDash in the United States or Blinkit here in India, how those food prices connect with what's happening in the economy? It'll make more sense to them. Discuss the latest AI breakthroughs and what it means for your students, what's happening in terms of medical innovations and all that. When students see that you're making in the effort to connect with your teaching, with what's happening in the world around, they lean in. They give you more respect. You have their attention. You've earned their attention. And here's another secret weapon that I'll share with you. Share the answer to the question, why does this matter? If you share the answer to this question early on, you're more likely to have their full attention. I had difficulty convincing my daughter that she should follow a morning routine in which she hydrates herself, does a little bit of stretching, this and that. But then I told her, listen, if you hydrate yourself in the morning, you will not have acne. And immediately I had her attention and she turned around and said, Dad, I'm never going to skip my morning routine again. Nobody ever told me before that if I follow this morning routine, I will not have acne. You see, I just correlated something which is useful with the current priority of a teenager, which is not getting acne. And she said, I wish more people would tell us why this is important and we will do it more. That's the psychology of a teenager. And I agree with you. If you're thinking, come on, not everything in the syllabus can be connected to real life applications. Or let's be honest, not everything in the syllabus will shape their future. I can hear you thinking that, and I agree with you. But even if it's a small percentage that you can connect with real life stuff, even if for some stuff you can say this skill will be useful if you work in finance or engineering, or even when running your household budget, you will have their attention and their engagement will skyrocket. So remember, abstract ideas become sticky when you connect them with their reality. It could be music concerts, shopping carts, the news, daily life struggles, or even cricket matches. The more you can say, this is where you can use it, the more your students will say, aha, I see why this is worth learning. Not all of them might say this, but you'll have a lot more engagement in your classrooms. I promise you that. All right, ready for tip number 5? And this is the most important one. And I think all the others rest on this tip number 5, which is never cease to learn yourself. Never stop learning. There's an old saying which goes, those who dare to teach, teaching is not for everyone, but those who dare to teach must never cease to learn. And I would like to give it my own twist. Those who dare to teach should never forget to continue embarrassing themselves. What do I mean by embarrassing yourself? I mean putting yourselves in situations which are outside your comfort zone, where you don't know what to do, but you are just stepping into that situation because you are willing to learn, because you are willing to stay a student at heart, because you are willing to admit that you don't know this and you're willing to learn. So this readiness to stumble, to learn and grow is what I mean by learning to embarrass yourself. You continue embarrassing yourself, you continue learning. But if you pretend that you know everything, that's what we've been trained on in conventional wisdom. A teacher should know everything. I even heard somebody say, if a teacher has said by mistake in the classroom that 2 + 3 is equal to 6, she should now prove it. I don't know, this is probably coming from the old school. If you've made a mistake or if you don't know something, I think you'll earn their respect more if you say, I don't know the answer to that, but I'll find out and get back to you, right? That humility, that vulnerability, it builds credibility and respect. And in the long run, it's better than trying to be a walking encyclopedia, because let's be honest, if you want to be a walking encyclopedia, you're competing with ChatGPT and other Perplexity and Google. They're already doing faster than any human being can. What students need from you is not perfection, is progress. They need to see that their teacher is like every other human, is still learning, is still curious, and she's still growing. They love it when they see that their teacher is also part of the journey of learning what's happening around in the world, in the environment. The danger, my friends, is when teaching becomes static, or when you become static, or when you develop what's called a fixed mindset, which says, I have my degree, I've been teaching for 20 years now, there's nothing more left to learn, I know my syllabus, and I'm the best teacher around, and that's enough. And you may be right, and I respect you for that, but the world outside your classroom is changing at lightning speed. You see, there's AI and machine learning and climate change, cryptocurrency, global conflicts, breakthroughs in medicine. You cannot afford to be cut off in a bubble of academia in your own little world. Students live in the real world. If their teacher appears out of sync, out of touch, or appears outdated or stuck in a time capsule, they will tune out. And once they switch off, it's very hard to switch them back on, right? But when the same students notice that you also know what's happening in the environment, that you are aware of current affairs and sports and business or trends on Instagram or TikTok or even fashion, they light up. You're no longer just their teacher. You are somebody who gets it, somebody who is relevant, someone who can connect timeless wisdom with today's realities. So you're not just dishing out information anymore, you're somebody who's connecting the dots. So here's my challenge. Keep learning, attend conferences, listen to podcasts, watch videos, read books outside your subject, explore cross-disciplinary ideas. You see, if we expect students to learn across disciplines, we must model that ourselves. So you don't just have to listen to podcasts and videos on getting better as a teacher. I encourage you to study leadership, psychology, communication, technology, culture, the news, current affairs, politics, economics, everything. Every bit adds some richness to your teaching, and you become someone who can connect the interdisciplinary dots. And there's so much that we can get better at. We can refine our body language, the tone of our voice, our delivery in the classroom, our presence, and we can just work on becoming a calmer, happier version of ourselves, and that will pay off in the classroom. You see, the moment you stop learning, your teaching loses its spark. Here's an extra special bonus point for everybody who's watched all the way till the end. Just like I promised you 5 tips, but I'm now slipping in one more, I suggest you do the same with your students. Give them something extra. That's the bonus point. Give them something beyond the textbook, beyond the syllabus, beyond the exam prep. Give them life skills. Think about it. You might be teaching English, Hindi, Sanskrit, Punjabi, mathematics, or science. That's your subject. But hidden in every class are opportunities, what educators call teachable moments. Teachable moments. These are those little narrow windows when the conversation drifts to something else, when a student asks an unusual question, or when something happening in society, in the outside world, connects to your lesson. And these, my friends, are golden chances to step outside the rigid framework of the lesson plan, of the syllabus, and plant seeds of wisdom that will stay with your students for life. It doesn't have to be elaborate or time-consuming. Even 5 minutes in every class is enough. Share a tip about time management. Talk about the importance of fitness and hydration and posture and stretching and morning routines. Explain how to build confidence in public speaking and communication. Share your own routines or how you stay disciplined with your schedule. Share your own life stories, your setbacks. Even a small reminder about gratitude or handling failure gracefully can create a lifelong imprint at the right time, on the right person, said in the right way. It could change somebody's life. And this matters because while your students will eventually or might eventually forget quadratic equations or periodic table or Shakespearean sonnets, they will never forget the teacher who prepared them for life. And the truth is this: our formal curriculum often misses the very skills these young people need the most. Things like leadership, communication, emotional intelligence, financial discipline, investment, taxes, resilience. If you can sprinkle a little bit of something out of these into your teaching, you, my friends, will go beyond just finishing chapters. You will be shaping characters. And then you will not need a separate life skills class. You can incorporate all of this stuff naturally into your lessons if you're paying attention, if you love your profession, if you're being creative. Let's say, for example, you're teaching a language. Can you slip in an exercise on public speaking? If you're teaching science, can you talk about curiosity and the power of experimentation? If you're teaching math, can you connect it to financial planning or logical decision making? Suddenly, you're not just teaching the concepts of a subject, you're teaching life lessons through your subject. And I know you're busy. You've got mark sheets to grade, lesson plans to finish, syllabus deadlines breathing, and all those extra events happening in the school. I know that. But trust me, these few minutes that you invest will pay dividends far beyond the classroom. I'm sure some of you might be thinking, I don't get paid to do extra work. I know that. But this will make you a real teacher. This will help you stand apart. Your students will respect you not just because you had the formal authority of a teacher, but because you had influence and love and respect. You didn't just teach them what was in the book. You taught them what the book forgot. And that's the difference between a teacher who is remembered for a term or for a year and a teacher who is remembered for a lifetime. As I close this video, first of all, I'd like to thank you for your patience, for your attention. And I'd like to mention one of my own teachers, Kaushal sir. He taught us food and beverage service back at my hotel management days at IHM Chandigarh. More than the subject of food and beverage service and restaurant operations, he taught us life. He carried himself like a true gentleman and spoke with dignity and poise and treated us like gentlemen and ladies. No, us like gentlemen and the girls like ladies, even when we did not deserve it, even when we were rowdy. His tone, his conduct, his presence, it all left a mark that I still carry with me today. I remember him starting his food and beverage lecture saying, gentlemen and ladies, and it was just, it would elevate the entire climate of the classroom. Kaushal sir was not just a teacher of a subject, he was an embodiment of what he was teaching. And that's why even decades later, I still remember him fondly. And I send him my love and regards wherever he is across the world. And just like that, my friends, just like I remember him, you will also be remembered years from now, perhaps in a different continent, perhaps in a different profession. Your students won't recall every formula, every date, every definition, but they will remember how you carried yourself. What was your attitude towards them? How you spoke to them, the tone of your voice, how you made them feel. Were you patient or were you careless? Were you learning as a teacher yourself or were you just forcing them to rote memorize? They're going to remember all of these things decades from now. And that, my friends, is the power and responsibility of being a teacher. The power and responsibility of being a teacher. And it's not a small one. Think about it. I work a lot with corporate organizations. But if one of my clients has a bad quarter selling biscuits or toothpastes or whatever it is, they can recover the loss in the next quarter. But if a child has a bad academic year, if their confidence breaks, if their curiosity dies, that loss is far harder to recover, sometimes impossible to recover. And I know your profession is demanding. I know it's not easy. I know it has its challenges. And I know them because I've spoken about them extensively in videos, on stages across the world, and I will continue to raise my voice for you, for the teachers, to create a better culture in schools so that you can flourish, to create better systems, better leadership, so you can flourish. But until the system changes or improves, we have the power to raise our game. And that's what I'm asking you to do here. Have fun with it. Have fun with your job. Teach with your heart. Be the kind of teacher who lights fires, not just fills notebooks. So I hope you enjoyed these 5+1 bonus tip on how to become a better teacher. And now it's your turn. I'd love to hear from you. Which one of these tips resonated the most with you? Share with me in the comments. What should have I added to the list? What did I miss? Drop it in the comments. Maybe we can create a part 2 of this video. And don't forget to share this video with your fellow educators. And thank you so very much for watching.